The views expressed on this broadcast of Speaker Monday with your host, the Monty Man, do not necessarily reflect the opinions of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting or its affiliates. KHLT is not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship.
Just when you think you have all your ducks in a row, life takes a spin. It happens again and again. It seems to me that when I take my will and let you go, without the booze, I've been living, that's a fact. Without the booze,
I've been making my way back.
Without the booze, I've been learning day by day to let it go and stay out of my own way.
Welcome to Speaker Monday with the Monty Man. Each week, Monty brings us speakers from a variety of 12-step fellowships. Now here's the Monty Man with this week's speaker.
Well, welcome, family, to another broadcast of Speaker Monday here at Take12Radio.com on your internet dial. This week, we have two speakers for this show, Scott Bray and Nathan Adams. Now, Scott Bray and Nathan Adams are both members of Recovery Life. Recovery Life is a faith-based 12-step fellowship that takes it back to basics, like in the early days of Alcoholics Anonymous. It is focused on understanding the problem and understanding the solution. And they are both speaking at the Recovery Life meeting in Albany, Oregon. And so without further ado, here's Scott Bray first, and then Nathan Adams.
I'm here to tell you a little bit about my story and my past life and everything. And, and I've been an entertainer for a little over 30 years, but I still get nervous every single time I'm up in front of people, especially when I'm talking about my past. I don't like to glorify my past. It is something that I just really wanted to forget about and just keep moving forward. I'm a self-disciplined person. I grew up with no father figure in my life at all. So I left home when I was 16 years old, and I've been on my own ever since. And it's been a struggle and an up-down struggle. I'm going to ask you guys a question. You probably have you guys ever looked in a mirror and, got up some morning or in the evening or something like that, and you've looked in a mirror and you kind of thought to yourself, how did I get here? Is this me? Is this who I am? And we do it all the time, especially us guys, we're always looking in the mirror, trying to do the little pec toss and everything else and, flexing our muscles a little bit or picking our ear hairs or something like that or whatever, trying to change who we are. We could change ourselves on the outside, but what really matters is when you change yourself on the inside, and that's where the real change comes from. And there's a famous song out by Michael Jackson. If you guys don't know who Michael Jackson is, then you need to go home right now. Okay? He wrote a song called Man in the Mirror, and the lyric says, I'm going to make a change. For once in my life, it's going to feel real good, going to make a difference, going to make it right. Kind of skip on, go into the chorus, and it says, I'm starting with the man in the mirror, and I'm asking him to change his ways. And that's kind of like how my life has gone. I hated who I was. I hated where I came from. My dad was a major alcoholic. He passed away in 1986 of cirrhosis of liver because of alcoholism. And, I kind of felt that I was kind of a part of that because I've partied with my dad before and just sat and drank with him and everything else and didn't realize the seriousness that the alcohol was behind that, and the illness that he had. Very abusive person, and as I growing up, I had my first beer when I was in Germany. My mom was in the military. I had my first beer at 11 years old, and back in Germany, there's not really any drinking age at all, back then. And I was asked my mom for some money, and they have beer machines. It's like Coke machines there. And at 11 years old, I'm sitting on the steps of a movie theater drinking a Colt 45, and the MPs came up, and I'm 11 years old, asking me. Well, I didn't realize that on the military base that there is a law. You're in the United States right now on a military base there. So I started smoking pot at the age of 13. I had my first joint in trade for sex. So I was also sexually molested at that age, and then my mom had remarried. My stepdad was very, very abusive. He was the type of guy that would line you up against the counter and shoot you in the rear. He'd load up his high-powered pellet gun, and he'd just shoot you in the rear, when you did something wrong. That was the type of guy he was. I wanted to feel accepted. I had no father, nobody really to raise me or anything, and the acceptance to that led into being a full-blown partier. In junior high and high school, I was already doing Quaaludes, I was already doing peyote, I was smoking marijuana, I was doing LSD, shrooms, you name it, I was doing it, and I just had to party. I found myself in being high and being drunk. That's where I found myself accepted. I could feel I had more confidence in myself being that type of person that I was. And I would even sneak alcohol in high school. I'd have a thing of alcohol in my locker in high school, and between classes, I'd go take a swig and everything, and between breaks, we'd be out in front smoking and everything else. So that's just who I was. That's just who I wanted to be, and I had fun doing it. I mean, I love the high, and it was in 1981. That's when I became an entertainer and started performing magic and that's and people really were amazed and everything, and the stuff I was doing, and so I'm like, wow, I really got this massive high from that acceptance and from people like, wow, you're really cool, you're the coolest, and so and so with that and the partying and the performing, that's where I found my identity and everything. That's who I was. I started, in high school, I started breaking into houses, and I started stealing things, and the theft got really, really bad, to the point to where I stole somebody's car. I hit them in the head with a beer bottle. I stole their car and took him out in the middle of, and I had this person in the car with me, and I took him out in the middle of the woods, and I dropped him off in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere, and just took their car, and then I was arrested for aggravated assault and grand theft auto. Why they never got me for kidnapping was a blessing, because they could have, because when you take somebody on there, out of their will, and you're forcing them, that's a kidnapping charge, and so that was a blessing in itself. I did 26 months in the state penitentiary for that crime, and it was in that time that somebody came up and told me about Jesus Christ. I've heard of Jesus Christ. I've been to Awanas and everything as a kid, and I've heard of who he was and everything, but I didn't really know who he was. And that's when this person had led me to Christ. He says, Christ is your only answer. I had nowhere else to go. What else was I going to do? I mean, I'm sitting in the middle of a jail cell, and rock bottom. I had nowhere else to go, and so why not? Okay, I'll accept Christ into my life, and I did, and I didn't have this. Some people say that you have this exhilarating feeling and everything else, and fireworks go off or whatever. I didn't have that at all. There was none of that, but there was a peace that came about me that I felt like I can do this. Okay, so after I got out of prison, I moved to Arizona to be with my family, my mom, and my mom was a big partier. She was an acid freak. She loved her Coke and everything else, and so I moved there and just ended up partying with her again. Wait a minute. I thought I was a Christian though. I thought I accepted Christ in my life. So where's the change at? I wasn't changing at all. There was nothing happening inside of me. I just went right back and I bounced right back into the partying scene and drinking and, ended up doing things like acid with my mom, and she lived out in the desert, and it was a crazy thing. I got married back in '89. I got married. And we, I had talked, she was a non-Christian, and she didn't know who God was at all, but I met her in a bar, and about a few years into our marriage, I talked her into going to a church. I said, we should start going to a church. So we ended up going to a church, and she, for some reason, out of my sin and my partying and my drinking and everything, she ended up accepting Christ into her life as well, and she became a Christian. She wanted to really make a difference. She didn't want me to drink at all. She didn't want me to party at all. So she would take all the alcohol away from me, and I wanted the alcohol, but I wanted to go to church at the same time, and so she was. I don't know what it was, but we were married for about 18 years, but our marriage ended up being kind of like a roommate type marriage. I wanted my own thing, she wanted her own thing. There was not a lot of commitment in our marriage. She wanted to adopt kids. We were told not to adopt kids. But I wanted to please her, and I said, okay, go ahead and adopt kids. So she adopted like 4 kids and went through the adoption process. And the friends that were in our life told us that if you adopt kids right now, they're going to just tear up your life. You adopt 4 kids at one time, it's just going to be detrimental to your life. And I didn't take the warning in or anything else, but I wanted to please her, and she adopted. Well, these kids, my stuff was getting broken. I had to give up my office and my house. Things just, I had to give up a lot of everything. I was on and I just couldn't handle it anymore. So I ended up, and I started doing meth, and I started doing crack cocaine, and I started staying out for 3 days at a time, a week at a time. Just because I wanted to get away. I didn't want to be around any of this at all. I wasn't ready for this. This wasn't who I was, and I wasn't ready for that type of commitment. Who I was when I was high and when I was drinking and when I was drunk. That's who I was, and I felt real comfortable in that, doing that stuff. So I left. I left to Alaska and went there, and my mom, of course, was there in Alaska, and she had a boyfriend, and it's like for some reason I always went after my mom because she was the big partier, and I felt I can connect with her a little bit better, because then she had what I needed to. And so I went to Alaska for a couple of months and ended up doing, the crack cocaine all the time with her. what person in their right mind just parties with their mom? I mean, you just don't see things like that anymore. I don't know. I don't know. I look back at it now, and I'm just, no parents in your life to discipline you or anything else. Your parents are part of yours too, and I don't know. That's probably the worst time of my life is, when I think about it a little bit. About a couple of months being in Alaska, some preacher came up to me and she said that, Scott, if you keep smoking that crack, it's going to kill you. And something inside of me I just wanted to give it up. So I ended up emailing a few of Christian friends of mine and confessing everything I did. And I called one of my friends, and he works with Family Life Radio, and he said, have you ever heard of Teen Challenge? And I said, yeah, I've heard of Teen Challenge. And he said, well, can you hang on for about a week, and we'll get you out of there? And I said, okay. Well, that week was the longest week of my life. It was just unbearable. So they flew me out of Alaska, and they put me into Teen Challenge. I mean, the minute I got off the plane, my feet didn't stop. There was no time for rest at all. I was in Teen Challenge. I didn't even have time to really detox too much, and I was coming down off the meth and coming down off of everything I could, and and it's like when you go into Teen Challenge, everything is cold turkey. I mean, no cigarettes. No, the first couple of weeks in the Teen Challenge where I was, no coffee. So that really sucked. And that was really bad. And, and then alcohol, meth, and crack and everything else. I'm coming down off all this stuff. So it was a rough run for me. I had some major anger issues. I mean, my anger was bad. When I got back to Arizona, I tried to reconcile my marriage, and she, my now ex-wife, she would come see me every now and then all of a sudden, several months into me being in Teen Challenge, into induction, she went ahead and sent me divorce papers. So I got these divorce papers in the mail. I was so pissed off that I took these divorce papers, I ripped them off, and I wrote the words victory right across them, and I just threw them away and everything. And that's the way I felt about it. And I wasn't even going to sign divorce papers or whatever. That's the way I felt. It's like, I'm not doing this. I'm going to keep trying to reconcile my marriage here. And when I got into Teen Challenge, it was really difficult at first, but as I went on, my life, things started to kick in my life that just started to, you get this surge of energy that you just want to do it. You just want to, you're done. And that's what happened when I was in Teen Challenge. I'm just like, I just want to change. So as I went through and when I got those divorce papers, I had kicked down the door. I ended up doing 2 weeks of discipline because I kicked down the door. I had to fix the door, and then when in Arizona, the Teen Challenge works this way. Okay, you go into a center for 4 months. That's your induction, and then they ship you off to Phoenix to a training phase, which is like 7 months. So I went to this training phase in Arizona, and I'm in my dorm with 4 people, 4 guys. One was a little kid, a little snot-nosed kid that didn't know what he was talking about. He was just a little black kid. And he wasn't in there for drugs or alcohol or anything. He just had nowhere to go. So he was in Teen Challenge, okay? And so he couldn't relate to a lot of people who were drug addicts or who were alcoholics and everything. So I came in and I was a little moody that day, and I came in, I was heated, I was in my closet and everything like that. And he's like, no wonder your wife left you. everything just turned to tunnel vision then, and I just kind of turned around and I just picked this kid up by the shirt and I just pinned him up against the door and everything, and his cousin was the teacher there, and his cousin walked in, and so I ended up doing I had a dead month, which means that you pretty much Teen Challenge is a year, it's 12 months, so I had 13 months now that I had to do, okay? On top of 2 more weeks of discipline. So I had discipline, which is rock ministry. And you have to go out with this wheelbarrow, and they have this mile-long trail, and you have to line these trails up with rocks. And then you have to go pick them up. So this is the discipline that Teen Challenge does, and they do this, and they keep doing this until you break, because there's a pride issue in you, and I had a lot of pride. I had so much pride. I was the most arrogant person that you could ever imagine. I knew it all. There wasn't anything in this world that you could tell me about that I didn't know, because I knew how to do it. I knew it, And that Teen Challenge had to break that pride out of me. And so after doing the training phase, then I had to come back for which they call reentry program, back to your originating center, which is about another 3 or 4 months. This you're kind of an overseer. You oversee the new guys that are coming in, and that's what you do. My marriage, for some reason, I could not get her to want to reconcile this marriage, and nothing was happening even after a year. There was a person, a staff member from Oregon, that came to the center and talked about this program called TCMI, which is Teen Challenge International Ministry Institute, and it's kind of like Bible college. And something inside of me said, you got to go do this. So I said, okay, I got to go do this. So I ended up signing up for that program. I did about 6 months of an internship in Teen Challenge, and then I flew out to Oregon, to Lebanon, where the TCMI program was, and I ended up doing that program for a year. And after graduating from that program, I kind of dropped away from Teen Challenge a little bit. There wasn't nothing anymore left that I could do with Teen Challenge. I'm like, well, there's nothing more. What can I do? Okay, I wanted to be a part of this program, but there was nothing knocking at my door. Nobody saying, hey, you want a job with Teen Challenge, or nothing was happening. So when I was going through this Teen Challenge program, the school, I met my wife, my second wife, and that is Charity. That's who some of you guys know Charity, who works here. She's the children's pastor here. And I met her, and I can never be more blessed than I am now. They usually say that the pastor is not greener on the other side. Well, this one was definitely greener on the other side. It's been such a blessing being married to her ever since. But Charity had to see some of my struggles and everything, because God wasn't done with me yet, and I wasn't done with me yet. I still wanted something. There was still something inside of me that I still wanted. I still wanted acceptance, and I still felt like, I had to find my identity in people. So I ended up getting a job at a funeral home in Albany, and so I was working at a funeral home in Albany, and I tried to get my insurance license because I was doing pre-needs, and I said, well, I can't get my insurance license because I've got a felony. And the insurance guy was saying, no, it's only if you had like embezzlement type felonies and things like that, not, aggravated assault. They're not going to look at that. So the funeral home put in a lot of money for me to take my test, and I passed this test. I have never passed a test in my life. I failed the military test 3 times. How the heck was I going to pass the insurance test? So the first time that Charity took me down to Eugene to take this test, I passed it, and I was so excited. I couldn't believe it. I was just so excited. This made me so happy. And so I had to jump through these hoops with the insurance commission to try to get my insurance license. And all of a sudden they came back. This is what happened. They came back and says, well, you have a felony. We can't give you your insurance license. You have to take the test and pay all this money before you get a license. So, which is really weird. It should be the other way around. And so the funeral home director says, well, we can't wait any longer for you to try to get your insurance license. You've got 30 days and to go ahead and move out. Because Charity and I were living in the apartment above the funeral home. And I was ecstatic. I was bummed. This brought me down to a really low level. So something else happened, and something else came through within about a week or two. I ended up selling cars, and the guy asked me, he's like, have you ever sold cars before? I'm like, I've never sold cars. Now, I've done a lot of jobs. I'm never afraid to do any job at all. I've done a lot of things. And he's like, well, we'll go ahead and we'll work with you. So I was working at the, you guys know where Pacific Auto Sales is? Pacific, yeah. It's where I was working out there, and I sold 9 cars in 1 month. And I have never sold cars in my entire life, but I love to talk to people. So, and all of a sudden the managers, the owner, his son, and his name is Cody, by the way, his son called me into the office about a month after I was working there, and he says, we're going to have to let you go. And I'm like, why? I go, I sold 9 cars. He's like, well, you just don't have the experience. He's like, we feel really bad that we didn't have the proper training for you. And I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? And he's like, well, I'm sorry. He's like, here's your final paycheck. We're going to have to let you go. This is 2 jobs in a month that I lost. And for any person, any man that wants to bring in any type of money and everything, this is like, it just brings you down to a really low level. So I just walked out of the office, I got in my car, and I did the next thing that I knew what to do best. And I just disappeared for a whole entire weekend. I turned off my cell phone. I didn't answer my cell phone. My wife had no idea where I was. The police were looking for me. Everybody was looking for me. And I just went on a huge drinking binge and everything. I spent $800 in 1 weekend on alcohol. And that's just who I was. I had fun. I did what I could. And then I ended up going back after the weekend, and then I couldn't stop drinking since. I kept drinking. Charity would get up, come to work about 9 o'clock in the morning, and just the minute she walked out the door, that was the minute I was heading down to the store to go buy me a 211. And I was drinking those because they were fast or high and get you drunk a little bit faster. Cheap beer. Yeah, and that's just who I was, and that's where I wanted to be, and I didn't care about anything or anything else. And it was to the point to where I ended up getting a job at a working at a storage place. And now at the storage place, you're just by yourself. There's nothing to do. So I was drinking on the job. I had the beer hidden underneath the counter. I would drink it. When somebody walked in, I'd hide the beer. I would start, when I needed more beer, I'd just take some money out of petty cash and I'd walk down to the store and I'd go get more beer. And, I just wanted to stay drunk because this is what I wanted to do. And so it was to that point that Charity threatened me and said, if you don't go back into Teen Challenge, she's like, we're done. She's like, I can't live with this anymore at all. And so I went back to restoration. Restoration program is about 6 months. It's you go back into Teen Challenge and you kind of recover back to where you were, and they try to dig a little bit deeper into you and try to figure out where the issue was. I had a deep issue that I wanted to cover up with alcohol. And after I completed that program, about 5 months into that program, the CEO of Teen Challenge came up to me because I had no idea where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. And the CEO, Chris Hodges, came up to me and offered me a position with Teen Challenge as their sponsorship coordinator. He says, I don't know what it was, but I was in Canada and I was praying for somebody about this position. And he says, you came to my mind. Now, obviously that had to have been God, because I had no clue what I was going to do, and why would the CEO of Teen Challenge come see me? Chris and I only knew each other maybe on passing, and that was about it. But other than that, I didn't really know him personally too much. So I offered that position, and I have been in that position ever since. So every day for me is a challenge. I have to ask myself every day, who are you today? What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? I have to think about what I'm going to lose if I start drinking or doing drugs or whatever. I have to think about, the people I will let down if I start drinking and everything. People like me, you look at people today and, they could drink and it's not a problem to them. They could put it down. But for me, if I drink, I'm done. I kind of look back at my past, and as weird as it sounds, I don't regret any bit of it, because I'm here today because of what happened back then. And this is where I'm at. And every day I thank God for where I'm at. And that answer for me is Christ in my life. That's the answer for me. And so I ask you look in a mirror at yourself. Easy to change the outside, but it's a battle to change the inside. That's my story.
He was talking about not wanting to glorify or talk about any of our past experiences like they were wonderful, but it's important for me to share it because it's part of my story, and that's how come I'm sitting here today sober. I can remember my first experience with any kind of mind-altering stuff. I think I was probably 9 or something, and I was at a family. They used to get together and they would hammer down the whiskey and they would play pinochle. And they would do this until they all fell down, pretty much, And I can remember getting into some cheap Canadian whiskey, like my first drinking ever. And I remember hitting that whiskey, and I remember drinking it, putting the old water back in it, all that trick. But I can remember, almost as soon as that stuff hit my belly, I can remember a peace. Like things were okay, like I was okay, and needless to say, an hour later, I'm the guy laying in the yard, butt naked in front of my whole family, getting the hose treatment because I was puking all night, That was my first experience. But here's the sick part. That very next day, I was on that whiskey again after being sicker than a dog, And I remember drinking that, and that's when me learning to try to control I want to have that perfect buzz, where everything's okay. And I never was too good at that. I never found the power in myself to do that real well. For me, I can remember one of the important things for me is I was never comfortable in my own skin. I didn't have no inner peace. I can remember I always felt different. I always felt, even at school and everything that I did, I too was searching for just an identity or anything, because I can remember being really lost. And I remember when I used or got that buzz I was talking about, everything seemed to be totally cool. And so I chased that like a madman. As soon as that whiskey hit my belly, it was on for me. I got really sick really fast. I started going to jail in a middle school. A lot of it was because I was getting loaded at school, and another place where I found out who I was, I was always a big dude, and I was always a fighting dude, And so back when I was a kid, the guy they'd say, Nathan's going to fight this dude, and everybody'd meet at the store, and there'd be a little boxing match. And I remember and I'd have a little bit of buzz on. I remember thinking to myself, this is exactly how it's supposed to be. This is me. I can remember thinking that. And, from that point on, I pretty much, I've never, ever, ever been a functional drinker or a user. I have never been the guy that gets loaded and is late for work one time. I get loaded, I commit felonies, and I break out in handcuffs. That's what I do. I've never had success ever, which is a blessing, which is a complete blessing. And I started this, I started numbing myself. I started a pattern at a really early age where I would numb. Everything's okay. And then 30 days, 60 days, boom, I'd have some kind of I'd get arrested or something would pop. I started this process. I have, I don't even know, but I have over 60 arrests or something ridiculous like that, because as soon as that stuff hit my belly, I would, and I started getting that stuff in my system and started practicing that. I was 30 days, 60 days in from that exact day that I started to use through high school, middle school, Most of the time, most of my stuff was fighting. I did a lot of fighting, and back then, you go knuckle to knuckle with a guy, you'd get a misdemeanor. It's a little bit different. And so I had a whole bunch of that stuff, and I also started becoming the class clown. I was the daredevil. I can remember there was an awards assembly, and there was this dude that was a bully and picking on everybody, and he was getting an award or something. And, of course, I was buzzing, and I got up in front of it when he got to get his award in front of the whole school, and I boxed his ears. And I just thought that was the greatest moment of my life, Had the school cheering for me. That's the kind of sickness that I swallowed early. My home life, was never. I always had a stepdaddy, and I have two brothers. One's really passive. One has some handicaps, and I was kind of the black sheep. And so I totally found my identity in being the sick one, being the crazy one, and it kind of worked. It's just like a kid when I'm born. I always push the limits until that stuff stops working. And the reason I bring that up is the insanity. I can remember at 16 years old going, this ain't working. I'm at a bottom, I can remember that. Needless to say, I had many more bottoms, And the reason I bring that up is because it doesn't matter what I do or matter what the heck, if I just drink on the weekends or I've done a lot of research on how to be a normie. And I don't have the power, I fail. I've had 1 million attempts with 1 million fails, pretty much. And, that what that tells me that I definitely learned today is that I don't have the willpower for that obsession not to be in me. I just don't have it in me. I proved that. And the only reason I'm sitting here for this 24 hours, and that's not a compulsion, is because some divine source is saving my rear end, period. You know, I definitely know that for a fact. You know, and I guess from there, from my teenage years, I think by the time I was 18, I think I had a year in the jails and stuff like that. And I can remember as soon as I back up. When I was 16, I went to a boys' home in Roseburg, and it was like a 6-month deal. And I can remember once again going into that place thinking, I remember doing what I was supposed to do there and thinking, that's it, man. I'm not going to use anymore. I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to straighten it up, and no matter what, that's it, you know, with all the plans in the world. And I can remember getting released out of that 6-month program, and I was supposed to get picked up or something, and nobody showed up to get me. And so the people took me to my house, which was 30 miles out of the way. And I remember opening the door, and my mother answered the door, and she didn't even look human. I mean, part of her hair was missing, and cigar burns on her, and just black and blue madness. You know, it was horrible, horrible. And the reason I bring that up, that's when my family split up. That's when I was on the streets. She went into a home for battered women and started doing her thing. And at 16, it was just me. And now she's a counselor and runs a treatment center, and it's all good now. But when I was, I can remember from 16 to 20 something, I never had a place to live. I never had a place to put my stuff. I went from party to party, from house to house, anybody that would take me. And I basically did crime, anything I could to live, survive. And I was arrested every 30, 60 days. I mean, that's just what happened to me. I mean, they don't just arrest me, they save me pretty much. I get arrested and I go in there and, some of the, what's a baffling thing about this disease is it doesn't care. It is not a prejudice disease. I've learned this. It doesn't care who I am, what I swear to, how strong I am, what I promise not to do. If I got a little kid in my arms, it does not care. It's designed to kill me. I mean, that's what it's designed to do. And I go to jail every couple months through this whole horrible addiction stuff, and I would get out with a plan. Like, dude, I got a little boy looking at me. I had a lady that I was married to. I had, you name it, you name it. And needless to say, every time, no matter what my heart said and what my willpower said and what I believed in and what I tried to do, I would fail. I guess I'll speed it up a little bit. Pretty much that's my pattern. When I was 19, and I got out of jail for, I think it was a burglary or something, and I had a son. I was supposed to get married and do all that good stuff, and I signed a plea bargain. I went into the courtroom, and the judge, I think it was for time served or something, and the judge looked at me and he asked me a question I will never forget. He said, because I went in there going, I got a job, I got a baby, I got blah, and he says to me, Nathan, he says, so would it matter if you stayed or if you had to go? Would it change anything? And my answer was, well, I'd have a lot of support here. I could be around my family, and I gave a bunch of excuses why. And he just let me run on a little bit. And he said, that's the wrong answer, because if you were changed, it wouldn't matter where you were. And he ended up giving me an upward departure, which was a couple years in prison. And that was my first trip. And, I know about, now I've worked the steps on a lot of stuff, and there's a certain trauma that happened to me being in there, because for one thing, whenever I'd get arrested and get forced to be in a room and face myself and sober up, hated it. Hated who I was. I knew what was right and wrong the whole time. You know, I always had a really big heart. You know, I was either, you know, I can remember towards the end, I can remember making sure I had something to wake up to so I could stay loaded every second. And it doesn't matter how tough and bad I was, I can remember not having that and just crying like a baby because I hated who I was. And I felt hopeless. I felt like I was broken, and I felt like my destiny was to do life, was to die, was to basically poop. You know, I was sure of that. And so, I don't know why I jumped there, but basically I'm up and doing my 2 years, and I can remember how it was seeing my boy. He's 19 now, and I can remember seeing that little guy beating on the glass. I got to see him once in 2 years, which killed me, absolutely tore me up. And I can remember him beating on the glass saying, "I want my daddy, I want my daddy." I mean, there's probably about 6 or 8 of those in there. And, you know, I can remember trying my hardest to stay sober. I mean, my heart was there. I mean, make promises to my son. And I could remember failing and failing and failing. And I remember doing my 2 years. I ended up doing my 2 years. I got out. My life with that lady and my son was poo, but I was still trying to be involved in my son. And I probably made it 3 months or so, not sober, but 3 months free. And I can remember a point where I decided, probably my lowest of lows, I remember, I want to die. I can't take this anymore. I am broken. And I ain't going back to that joint again. I had like 7 years locked up at this point. And I can remember telling myself, I ain't doing it. I want to die, but I was too chicken to do it myself. So for some reason, high as heck, I told myself, I'm going to have the cops kill me. You know, and I remember that whispered in my head. And to make a long story short, I ended up on, you know, in a bunch of high-speed chases and national news, and you know, there was 26 crimes and 26 felonies in that one chase. They had me at gunpoint 32 times, wouldn't kill me. I learned now that my family, because they had every 15 minutes, they were calling me the one-man crime wave, is what they're calling me on the national news, and it would flash every 15 minutes, my wife, my parents, and they would all stop and pray, like, don't let him die, don't let him die, you know. And I ended up, make a long story short, I ended up on this 9 or 10 hour chase, and like I said, they just wouldn't shoot me. I got bit all up and down my body by the canines. I mean, I got tore up pretty good, and I can remember, because my chase ended, I had 4 or 5 different contacts with them. I wrecked a few cars, and I kept escaping, and I just kept dragging it on. But I remember it ended, and all the mountains around me were burned. It was down in the Ashland area, and all the mountains were burned and clear-cut. And I took off running up those things. And basically for 6 to 8 hours I ran on the news, you know, with helicopters looking at me and dogs chasing me. And I can remember sitting on top of this mountain, and I remember praying out to God like, man, you know, and you know, I remember looking down, and this is not an exaggeration, but all I could see were there was 13 counties and National Guard. I mean, it was disgusting. And I could see everything, and I realized this is where my life had led me. You know, this is where my life had led me. And make a long story short, after a little bit of struggle and a little resistance, I ended up getting locked up into county jail. And most of my crimes, I mean, I think the first plea bargain was most of my life. Was in the 20s or the teens or something. If you sign guilty to these, we'll give you 18 or something like that. And I could remember being in the county jail, and this is how sick I was, folks. I couldn't even function in jail population. I was so angry and miserable and hated myself so much. I was lashing out. I was the guy throwing pea cups at guards. I mean, I was a nasty dude. And angry, got angry at myself, you name it. And this is where I was introduced to the 12-step programs. But I remember sitting in a cell just broken. I've been in the cell like 6 months by myself. And I remember sitting in the cell, and I remember just hitting the ground and crying, just like, Lord, God, whatever, I'm done. You know, I don't know what to do. You know, and I mean, I cried for a good hour or so, and that's when I had my first moment of clarity. I mean, and this is probably hard to explain, but I swear to you, I literally felt like God was shining a beam hope of light. And literally, I just felt like raising my arms up to it. I mean, that's what I felt, you know. And that's about all I know about it. But I just felt like I wasn't alone, that maybe there was hope. And, yeah, I can't explain it except I just picture a really bright beam of hope, you know. And I just want to get naked in it. I mean, that's how I felt, right? And I can remember, so, I mean, that's honestly exactly how I felt. And so, so, you know, it goes on a little bit. I remember hearing something. This is where, you know, it started to change for me. I can remember sitting in the cell, and I heard something about, we're going to I don't know, it was AA or NA or one of those 12-step groups, and I go, I want to go. They go, negative, you ain't going, you know. You got to behave for 2 weeks, you know. And I wanted out of my cell, not even sure about what that program was. And after 2 weeks of being good, they let me go. And they took me in this room, and it was my first experience with this program. I was the only inmate handcuffed and shackled, and I was in the corner. And I honestly feel like today that meeting was made exactly for me. I remember sitting there in that corner, just completely lost, baffled, hopeless, like, you know. And it was like there was like 9 people from the outside. And there was like seemed like in my little pea brain, it was like every aspect. There was a housewife, there was a doctor, there was a tattooed up dude like me, there was seemed like every aspect I could think of in my life was sitting there. And I remember thinking that, like, wow. And then I remember sitting there listening to these people talk. And here's what blew my mind is even the housewife talking about taking too much pain pills and how, I mean, everything. I heard so much similarities in her story. And every single person, they were basically telling my story. And to me, it was just like unbelievable. Holy crap. I'm not alone. You got to be kidding me, you know, because I believe that with all my life that I was terminally unique, you know. And I can remember all of them telling a part of their story, and I remember just going, whoa. And then they were telling me how they were staying sober. And it just blew my freaking mind out of the water. I never even considered that was a possibility. And I don't know, that was where the first seed of hope was put in me right there. And I remember thinking, if that dude can do it, I could do it. And if that dude can do it, I can do it. And if that chick can do it, I can do it, you know. And it absolutely just blew my mind. And I remember going back to my cell and doing a little praying. And this is not an exaggeration, but I'm a couple days short of going to trial. And the news cameras are still all over me. It's ridiculous. And I'm looking at that 18-year deal or whatever the heck it is. And I basically, one day, Nate, you got a visitor. And I show up, and I had a public pretender, you know. And some dude showed up from his office, or it was actually a chick. Never seen her before in my life. And she says, Mr. Adams, I got a new deal for you. And I go, okay. And I look at it, and I just look at the bottom of it, and it's 18 months in the county jail. I went, what? And I never seen the lady again. I don't even know what that was about. You know, I've thought about it. But it was, you know, one of the things I did in the chase is I walked in a restaurant at the beginning, grabbed the cash register, put it on my shoulder, and walked out. That's what I did. That was the start of my crime, right? Didn't say nothing to nobody. Jumped in a car and started the chase. But the thing was, they had me for robbery, which was like a 7-year sentence. But since there was less than $100 in it, and I didn't threaten nobody. It was turned into like a theft charge or something. It was, and they started breaking down some of my stuff, and they ran them all wild. At 18 months, 30 days, 60 days, 30 days, and they ran them all wild. And I signed that as fast as I could. And I can remember at this point thinking, something's working here. Something is totally working in my life. And I called my PO at the time, and I'm like, dude, I got to go to treatment. Weird stuff's happening up in here and inside me. I have no idea, but this is cool. And needless to say, I did my little 18 months and got out, ended up going to treatment. And it all started for me. I knew my wife before then, and we were dating. I went to treatment and left her. And I went to treatment in Roseburg. I was from Grants Pass. And after treatment, I just knew, I go back to Grants Pass, I'm going to make it. I just knew I've raised too much ruckus there. And I remember moving to a lady that I was in treatment with on her couch with a suitcase full of clothes. That's how it all started for me. And I can remember a couple things that made a huge difference for me. One of them is, and I don't know when it was, but I remember going to meetings every single day and just making it between meetings. Because, let me tell you, I try to think, today I still do this. I try to think of things, plan how they work, understand this, and before I swallow it. And there's so much mystery and magic that the man does up there, and that just happens from being part of the solution. And things happen in a way I never seen coming. But I'm telling you, that first 90 days, 90 meetings or whatever it was, I mean, that's what I did. I went to meeting, and I screamed and cussed between the meetings, and I made it to the next meeting and didn't use between the meetings, And there was a certain time in there where all of a sudden I woke up one morning and I had the reprieve. I mean, I just was gone. I wasn't thinking about it. I wasn't thinking about getting loaded. I mean, it was huge because I ain't felt that in a million years, it felt like. And so, I mean, one of the benefits, I just knew that, it's a gift from God that it's never been successful for me. And even to this day, everything that I have in my life is because I've been able to stay sober. Everything crappy in my life because I didn't stay sober. I mean, it's black, white, And, at this point, I mean, I got to tell you what God has done in my life, even before I acknowledged Him. That's the beauty of this. Even when I'm the most arrogant pig in the world, I mean, I'll wreck a car, roll it off a cliff, and get out and go, I'm the luckiest man alive. And He even let me think that. Over and over, the most, you just think about that and how humbling and how much grace is involved in that and the love, and I didn't even understand it at this point. And I can remember I got custody of my son. He was 2 or 3. And I had a job, and I can remember, my first meetings, I call it criminally insane, but my head was so warped that it doesn't matter what was going on. When I was sitting in a room, all I could think about was, I could knock that dude out, that chick is hot, I could take that guy's watch. I mean, my brain was insane. I mean, and then if I was to try to share, I'd offend everybody in the room. I mean, that's exactly where I came from. And I remember thinking, wow, I am screwed up. I remember that, plain as day. And so I can remember going to lots of meetings. And here's something I learned really, if anybody is struggling with anything that they just don't understand, I'm telling you, being a part of the solution and trusting God, there is a thing that I've learned that I have to practice every day. The most, change is something I can't force. I can only welcome it by doing the footwork and letting it go. And my whole experience is I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do, staying a part of the solution, and the next thing you know, I go, wait a minute, I just heard what that dude said in the meeting. I actually shared and didn't offend everybody in the room. I mean, that's how my whole change process has happened. And that's, it's actually pretty simple for me. There's a couple things, I started really diving into H&I and started chairing a meeting. I mean, I grabbed onto those meetings. That was my lifeline. And, basically from here to there, that was 1997. Yeah, I think it was 1997. And, today and what's happened in my life, it's unbelievable. I still, I'm getting out of prison. I can get my own hamburger, that kind of like it's Christmas feeling. I still have that today. It's kind of a shock and awe because I have own the home, the belts, the whistles, the construction business. It's just beautiful kids, beautiful wife. I have all of that amazing stuff. And, here's the thing for me is this disease, for me, it does not go away. Because I've had 5 years clean, relapsed. I've had 3 years clean, relapsed. I've had 3 years clean again and relapsed. And I had 2 years clean and relapsed. So I understand, that this is a two-way street. When I do what I'm supposed to do, I trust God, I clean house, and I help others. And the rest, if I do that stuff, I get the gift for the day. If I don't do that stuff, my gift gets taken away. And it does not get any better, just like he was sharing. I get right back into sickness. This is an honest disease. It's about life or death. And, I am grateful to be a part of, I could go on about the steps, and I'm probably running out of time here, but one of the things that I'm going to share one quick thing about the steps. Once again, I never understood them until I was done working them. And I remember being that miserable, being that desperate, and not wanting to be miserable, that I would do anything. I had a willingness to do, and I was honest about doing anything. And I did those things, and there was a freedom and a certain, maybe that's how normal people think. Maybe that, for a sick dude like me, it's like 1, 2, 3. Now you're thinking like a normal dude. Maybe that's what it is for me because, to make my amends, to do all that stuff, to basically, the biggest thing is keeping this thing inside me clean so I can feel comfortable in my own skin so I don't have to numb it. That's my experience. And that is not easy for me to do. I'm the kind of guy, I'm so sensitive to that. And I imagine, if I piss on a toilet seat, I wipe it up. Little things. There ain't much. I have to keep that thing clean. And with that being said, it takes a lot of work for me to do that. And it's, that's, this is my journey. I have to stay on this. I got to continue to go to meetings. I got to continue to be a part of this thing. I got to continue, I got to look at myself daily in the mirror, like he was saying, because, I'm the kind of guy, I get to driving around in my new truck, being the boss, all these guys working for me and doing my thing. And in company myself, I'm a company of a madman. I can make a bad idea sound good within one trip to Sweet Home. My head, that's not a joke. My head, I don't know what it is, but my head will swim and my disease will kick in and I will get sick. And but there's the thing about this whole thing is the tools. I have people. I literally have, in my life today, I can't even tell you how many people I could go lay in their lap and cry like a baby and they wouldn't judge me. Because the problem is if I let an irrational thought and feeling roll around in this melon of mine, and I let it become toxic, I'm going down. I've done it. That's why I relapsed. It's what I've done. So I got to grab a hold of Eve and Jay and say, I just got to turn every stone and not take any chances because, like I said, I am the underdog. And life is absolutely amazing, and it is a lot simpler. It is a lot simpler than my head makes it. I just gotta do God's will, trust God, clean house, help others, and take care of my family. And then and that's the thing about this whole thing that I know for a fact, at least for me, is that when I do that and I keep it simple like that, I got an umbrella. God has got me, and I have never went without. Not because I'm wonderful and hard, none of that. Because once I do that, I got to believe that I'm taken care of, or it ain't, and it's been like that for me. I spend so much time wasting energy worrying about things I have no business even thinking about. They all work themselves out, just like I was talking about change, you know. So I guess for me, the biggest challenge for me today is to say willing, the same willingness I had when I crawled in that treatment center, fresh out of the penitentiary with nothing. I have to try to keep that. I have to do some uncomfortable stuff daily. You know, getting up at 6 in the morning reading scriptures. I think I'd rather sleep in a little bit, but I do it because I know there's things that I do that are not comfortable that I have to do, and out of desperation, and I guess out of respect for this disease. You know, I guess I didn't get much into the solution per se. I guess the main thing I want to pitch today is, if anybody's like me where their head runs around and makes things difficult, that's what my brain does. It'll run around over, I don't feel good inside, I wonder why, it's because I'm a loser, or whatever it may be. Next thing you know, I'm lost in whatever that is. And it is so much simpler than what my brain says. You know, sometimes I just got to put my head to the ground or look up or do the certain things, not expect answers, and they just happen. You know, so I mean, it's not, you know, simple. My one sponsor used to tell me all the time, keep it simple, stupid. That's what he's telling me all the time, right? You know, and that's, you know. So I don't know, man. I guess the big thing is I'm grateful to be sober today, and, you know, please in the morning, thank you at night, and make mistakes and own them, and, you know, keep doing this thing. And thanks for letting me share.
Thanks, bud. Well, thank you, Scott. Thank you, Nathan. Folks, until our next broadcast, this is the Monty Man, and we are wishing God's perfect serenity for you. Bye-bye now.
Without the booze, I've been living, that's a fact. Without the booze,
I've been making my way back.
without the booze, I've been learning day by day to let it go and to stay out of my own way. Stay out of my own way. Stay out of my own way.
This has been a broadcast of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.